So are you ready for Christmas? Sometimes we have to sit down and define what in the world that means. You know, December 24th and 5th are going to come, ready or not. And part of the kindness of our loving God is that He calls us together as His children on Advent evenings like this because He knows the challenges for you and I to get ready. Oh, I'm not talking about the food to be cooked and the cookies to be baked and the presents to be bought and the decorating to do and the places to go. I'm talking about our hearts and our souls and our time and our eternity, what God has planned for us and wishes for us because He loves us so very much. So over the last few weeks we've heard about Zechariah and Elizabeth, old people having babies. And it strikes us that that's kind of distant from us, but holy cow. Because of course, do you remember this? Because with God, all things are possible. And that's not true just for Zechariah and Elizabeth. It's true for us too. Now don't worry about getting pregnant, but it's true for us too. Right? We've heard about Joseph and how he was confounded in the middle of what he had planned and anticipated for his life, what he was getting ready for. God stepped in with something so much bigger and so much more wonderful. It speaks to our lives. But we're not Joseph, and our children aren't the very, very Son of God, but holy cow. We have a plan, and then God has a plan. And the joy for us as His children, especially at this time of year, is that He reminds us that the big plan up here, which flows through His Son, includes us down here. Every single one of us. Isn't that something? And then tonight we come to this little window into Christmas. This place in Mary's life. Oh, we know Mary. It's a familiar thing to us, this young woman. We know her, we know her. We know her through the pages of the Scripture. We know her kind of from a distance. We know this unusual unfolding in her life. We see her at this point, and when her son is 12, and later on when she suffers the loss as a mother, as a loving mother of this child. We know Mary kind of from a distance. We do. There are some really amazing stories at this time of year. Though sometimes I think they can seem kind of distant to us. Oh, they're great stories, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking about angels coming to visit and unusual things happening and God stepping in and doing miracles. I'm not talking about miracles with a little m. I'm talking about miracles with a great big M. Oh, man, they're great stories. If you've been a Christian a long time, then with the preacher that stands in front of you tonight, you've heard these stories since you were maybe a little child. These amazing, wondrous stories. And yet, whether they speak to you and me where we live, well, now that's kind of a different matter. Probably a more difficult proposition. Whether this place where a baby is born to an old woman, or this man who's getting married is visited by an angel, or this young woman comes and hears something that is so remarkable and so striking that it changes everything, not just about her life, but all of human history, whether that speaks to where you and I are, where we sit on the job and in our homes and with our children and our spouses and in the middle of our lives, in the moments of our lives, in this part, this dirt and rust and grass and gravel reality that you and I live in, whether these stories, these remarkable stories, whether they come home to where we are. Boy, that's a different matter. From the time I was a Sunday school child, just a little boy, through youth group in high school and on into college, to the time of my life where I quit going to church, and then when the Lord drew me back. 3 years in college and then seminary and getting married and having children and becoming a preacher of all things. Man, I've heard these stories and preached about them more times than I can count. Yet I think tonight, gosh, I've been thinking about this all week. In your life and mine, where we really live, where we are today, with our houses and our mortgages and our fears and our failings and our strengths and all that is part of our lives, our worries, our sleeplessness, our place in life. How do these stories, these
Mary things and Joseph things, how do they speak to you and me right here and right now? Well, I'll tell you something, loved ones, and I want you to hear this, and not just with your ears, hear it with your heart. The struggle we have is only because of our sin, because our sin stands in the way. It's not because the stories don't have a voice. Or more specifically, that God's voice doesn't flow down through these wondrous narratives. It's because our limitedness, our brokenness, our sinfulness stands in the way. When's the last time you really saw a miracle? No, I'm talking about in your own life. When's the last time the presence of the Lord was so rich and so full and so real that it turned the wheel in such a way like you'd never seen it before? When's the last time? We think to ourselves, well, maybe because they're so distant, 2,000 years has slipped away, and so how could that really have anything? Oh, it's nice like the decorations. You know, we put them up and then we'll put them away, but it's kind of pretty. It decorates things for a little bit in the month of December, but for right now, well, you hear me. It's because our sinfulness, loved ones, our sinfulness stands in the way. So listen. What God has done and continues to do is really, really personal. He didn't just come to the people in the stories, although God knows He certainly did. He still comes. He comes to us. He comes to the right now of our living. He comes to the places where you and I are strong and where we are weak, where we are high and where we are low, where we are succeeding and where we're failing, where we're really good and where we're really bad. God comes to the right here of our lives. This kind and gracious and wondrous Lord who visited Zechariah and Elizabeth, who came to Joseph, who made a promise to Mary. He comes right to the right now of your life and mine with everything it is, all that it entails, and everything that we are. He comes knowing who we are. Absolutely, intimately. And He comes knowing absolutely everything that you and I are experiencing and going through and up against and thinking about and feeling and wishing and longing for. God is so kind and so wondrous. He comes to the right now of our lives. And He brings with Him gifts that are real and powerful. Just exactly what you and I need. He brings forgiveness and strength and assurance and comfort and peace and hope. I'll ask you tonight, which one of us here, which one of us now, tonight, in this place, in this moment in our lives, which one of us don't need those things from the Lord? He comes because His love for us is strong and real, and the gifts He brings are free and merciful and grace-filled. He comes to place into your heart and mind, right into the middle of our lives, exactly what we need. Now let me take you further. What God speaks into your life and mine through the Christmas stories has real life, personal implications too. Hear me tonight. Tonight, in this moment of our lives, knowing, think of this, knowing that He loves you and me just like He loved Mary. Let me say that again. Knowing that He loves you and me just like He loved Mary. Oh gosh, it sets us free. It sets us free to have cups in our lives and in our hearts and in our souls just absolutely overflow If God can know everything about me and still love me, isn't that something? And you know, the more He loves you and me, just like He loved Mary and Joseph and Zachariah and Elizabeth, each and every one of them, as He loves us like that, the cups of our lives, He just fills them up, and little by little, it frees us to love too. To love in real ways, concrete ways, absolutely wondrous ways. Think of this today. Today, knowing that this kind God supplies our lives, provides for us abundantly, just like He did for them. Man, oh man, just think how generous we become. At every moment, at every turn, every single thing that they needed, God reached in and came to them, and by His mighty and loving and open hand, He provided for them every single thing they needed, as He did for Mary and Joseph and Zachariah and Elizabeth. Listen to me, children. So He does for you and me. Kind of frees us, doesn't it? Knowing today that we're safe, takes away the fear. Not just that we're safe now, but that in His hand and from His heart, we'll always be safe. At every place, at every turn, as the baby grew inside of her, there had to have been for Mary fear and anxiousness and faith and wondering and doubt and struggle and joy. All of it from the hand of God, and all profoundly, absolutely personal. They're great stories, like the one we hear about Mary tonight. What I want you to know, loved ones, is they are so much more than just stories. They share a gift with us. That God still comes to you and me, to right where we live. He comes to bless us with exactly what we need. Just like He did for Zachariah and Elizabeth and Joseph and Mary. With God, for each and every one of us. It's personal. Glory. On this Advent evening, this is the teaching of the Lord. If you would